arrays, we talked about quite a number of things under arrays, right? And I said arrays are basically they allow multiple storage of variables. Do you get it now? So you can have multiple data types also under arrays. So now that is that about arrays. Now, in today's class, we will be going into something much more different than what we discussed in our last class. In today's class, we will just go ahead and talk about two major things: objects, and then we'll also talk about functions. Now, these things are very, very much important. Then later on in this course, probably on Monday, we'll talk about modules. Now, it's very much important that you understand what modules are, right? So we'll talk about some ES6 syntaxes so that you can understand how to use all of these things. ES6 syntaxes. So what am I saying? What's wrong? How's this thing? So yeah, we'll talk about some ES6 syntaxes. So let me show you some of the ES6 syntaxes. You know, I told you that JavaScript evolved to ECMAScript and then it got to ES6, right? So we'll talk about some ES6 advanced topics. I'm trying to check it out to see if we have some of them here. Very good. So ECMAScript 6. So we'll talk about some things in ECMAScript. So as you can see, the new features in ECMAScript, the new features like we've talked about was the let, const, talk about arrow functions, operators, some operators. You have map object, you have promises, you have classes, symbols. We'll talk about all of these things, not all, but some of them that we need to know to get started. Then you can also go ahead, but I don't know what's wrong with this HTML. You can also go ahead to like just research on some of them on your own. But yeah, these are what some of these I'm talking about. I want to connect it wirelessly now. So let's just go to it. All right, so let's continue. Okay, so now I think I've deviated a little bit. Let's come back. Let's come back. Let's talk about objects. What are objects? What do we mean by objects? Right? Now, when we talk about objects, now let me just give you a brief introduction to what objects are. Now, JavaScript objects are variables that can store both values and functions. Let's leave that. Now, one of the objects are one of the most important concepts in JavaScript. I don't think they are giving the right definition. Come on, let me give you a better definition. So let us use Google. I don't want to like define it from my own head. So let's just use good. Let's use MTN Docs. I don't want to just use anyhow definition. So now let's check out JavaScript objects and let's see what we have. So if I go to JavaScript, very good. Let's use the beginning. So now what do we have here? We have working with objects. Very good. Now look at it. JavaScript is designed as an object-based paradigm. An object is a collection, listen to it, An object is a collection of what? Properties. And a property is an association between a name, that's a key, or and a value. You understand? Now, what does this actually mean? And I say an object is a collection of properties. So, for instance, if I want to talk about Mr. David now, right? I don't talk about the properties of Mr. David. What am I saying? What do I say? Oh, okay. He's putting on a cap. His name is David. This is his age. This is what he's doing. He wears glasses, right? He has an Acer system, right? Those are properties of what? David. Do you get it now? Don't talk about properties of Samuel. You also like look at him and talk about his properties. Or maybe if you not know him deeply, oh, this is the course he studied, this is what it does, this is, do you get it now? That is properties of what? Mr. Samuel. Now, an object is now a collection of those properties. You understand? It's a variable that now what collects those properties together. Now, it is different from array. Array just has multiple properties, but it is not exactly a property of something. You understand? So, for instance, you have fruits, but you can have different fruits, but not a property of that fruit. If you now pick out apple and now give properties of apple, that is what an object. So, arrays can be like a collection of different objects. Can put it that way. You understand? But objects will now give you what? Properties of that particular thing. Now, that is what your array, that's what your objects are. Objects are what? Collection of. Now, objects in JavaScript, just like many other programming, can be compared to what? Objects in real life. Now, in JavaScript, an object is a standalone entity with properties and what? Type. So, compare with a cup. A cup is an object with properties. What are properties? It has an handle. Some can be breakable rather, or unbreakable cups, right? Now, these are examples of what properties are. So, for instance, let's take an example. If I want to create an object, one of the first things I need to do is that now you can create an object using an object initializer. Alternatively, you can first create a constructor function and then instantiate an object by invoking that function with the new operator. Now, that is not what we're going to be doing. I'm just going to go ahead and use object initializer to create it. Now, how do you create an object? So I'm going to show us. To create an object, it is very easy. First of all, I can use const, right, or let, to not use var. In fact, going forward, we're using const for now. So I'm going to say const. Let's say I want to create an object about a person. Okay. About a person. Again, the normal way you create your what? Variables, right? Equals to. Now, arrays, you have to use what? What's the angle bracket, right? But, sorry, not angle bracket, square brackets. Now, but for your object, you have to use curly braces, right? Now, I cannot have what? Oh, first name of that person can be, let's say, Paul, or let's use John, so that we're going to use an unknown person. We're going to say the last name should what be Joe. Then you can have occupation, right? Occupation should be software engineer. Then you can also have a lot of things. You can say degree. You can say doctorate degree. Let's also PhD. PhD. Yeah. But let's just use masters. Masters. Right? You can say experience. +15 years. 15+ years. Now, first name is what? John. Last name to occupation software engineer, degree, master's, experience 15+ years. You understand? Now, this is describing a person's occupation, describing a person's qualification as what? As a developer. Oh, my name is Paul. My last name is Doe. My name is John. Last name is Doe. Occupation is software developer, software engineer. I have a master's degree, and then what? I have 15+ years of experience, right? Do you get? Can also add another thing. So it's not only string. Can add age, should be like, let's say 25, or let's give it okay, 25. No, that's going to be unbelievable. Let's say 35. No, 35 also might look unbelievable. Let's give it 20. What am I saying? I want to make it someone very young. Let's use 45. Do you understand now? Now, as you can see now, you have a person's age. Let's take this up a little bit. Occupation, degree, and experience. Do you get it now? Now, this is an object. And as you can see, I had multiple details about this person. Right? But an array, now I can call this, I can say person. Let's give this John. Right? Now, an array can now be const persons equals to what? I can have this array. Then I can take this particular one here. So I can say, oh, since it's going to be, I can put this Ctrl X, then I can place it here. So you've had the first person, isn't it? I can now have another person. Paste. Now this person, I can give this person Paul. I can give this Levy. You understand? Now, as you can see, multiple words. It's giving us a problem. There's a problem with this. Let's just let person. Okay. There is a problem with this. Why is it giving me an error? I don't even understand why it's giving me an error. But let me go back and check it again. There should be a reason why it's giving me an error. I cannot actually understand why it's giving me an error now. But yeah, now that is that about. That's not about that. Let me remove this. No need for all this stress. Now, I can easily just even come here. I can say, oh, John, that's my first person, right? Because why? I already defined it here. John. Now, imagine I duplicate this. Then this is what Paul. This is let's say Samuel, right? So I'm going to say first name to Paul, last name here should be Levy. Here, first name here should be what Samuel, right? Now I can just go ahead. This is an array, right? I can have comma Paul, comma what Samuel. Now, what have I just had? I have 3 persons here, but in this array, you will never have their what? Properties. But it is now objects that will now give you like a property of each and every one of them. Now, if I go ahead and comment out and say, okay, let me say console.log persons. Now, what I'm just going to see is I'm just going to see, oh, let's check it out. And let's see what we have. So now, see what we are going to have now. We're just going to have what? 3 arrays of what? Objects. Right? Not that I'm just, now if I now go ahead and say, I want to have, oh, person in index 0, which is what? John. So what are you going to have now? You're not going to have first name, last name, and everything about what? John. Now, that is one thing about what your arrays and your objects. Now, as a developer, you need to know this is very much important. You see, objects, because JavaScript is actually an object-oriented language. Very soon, we'll talk about JSON. JSON stands for JavaScript object notation, whereby you now start having to like understand how to read objects, how to understand how your APIs will mostly be read in JSON format. You understand, so that you can understand. So what JSON is that converts data to human readable format whereby you can read it. Now, for instance, you can read this, right? Age 40, degree, masters, experience 15 years plus. Do you get it now? You can understand this. Now, that is basically what JSON is going to do for you. Now, we're going to talk about that later on. It's not really that hard to learn. You get it very fast. Now, that is that about your objects. So your objects are what? Just that thing that gives you what? Additional information, or gives you the proper, not additional information, gives you properties of something, of a particular element. Now, let us go ahead to access the values of some of these properties. So for instance, let's say I want to get the first thing I want to use the first name of the first name here to do something. I can go to I can say console.log. What's the name of the property here? John. Let's change to person. I can say console.log person. If I say console.log person, what am I gonna have? The same thing we had when we got the first array, right? Good. Now, but let's say I want to get the value of what do. I use something known as what the dot notation. So in objects, to get values from an object, use what? Your dot. So if I say person dot age, right? And I check my what am I gonna have? 40, right? If I say console.log person dot what? Let's say occupation, what am I gonna have? I'm gonna have what? Software engineer. Do you get now? That's how you get values from your objects. Please, we understand objects. Is it very clear to us now? And that is that about objects. Now, of course, there are other things you still need to understand in objects. And what are those other things? For instance, how you can use a constructor to create an object. Now, alternatively, you can create an object with those two steps. Define the object type by writing a constructor function. There's a strong convention with good reason to use a capital initial letter. Now, what's it saying? I can say function car, then I can have make model, and yet I've not talked about function yet. So you might have issues with it. So you not define parameters and make these parameters your objects, right? But we'll talk about this later after we've talked about function. And this exactly is how you can start writing your objects. Do you understand it? It's clear to everybody. So let's go ahead and have another example. I'm going to have another example now in objects. So for instance, let's say you want to have let's say you want to create another object and call it up const. Let's say let's call it new car. Now, because I like what's the name? Ford a lot. So I'm going to say make that's the no, let's call it make. I'm going to call it Ford. Let's see yeah. Let's see. Let's call it Ford. Let's say yeah. Which one do I used to like at the time? Can't remember. 2018. Then let's check the model. The model should be a Mustang. Right? Now, this is an example of what like a car. Probably you want to get a new car and like, oh, I need to get a new car and the make is Ford, year is 2018, then the model is what? A Mustang. Now, so we're gonna say, oh, what's the make of the car? Ford, right? What year is it? That's a property. So I can go ahead and say console.log. So I want to check out the year. Let's give it new car dot what's year. Good. Now, if you check it out now, what are you gonna have? You should have 2018 exactly. So it's the same thing. I can have same thing. New car dot what make, then new car dot model. So let's check it. So as you can see, 2018 Ford Mustang, and that is that about. Let me see how it looks like again. So Ford Mustang 2018. So yeah, this is not it. This is definitely not. Probably is like another older thing. But yeah, that's that about objects. Do we understand it? Okay. Please, I need to know if you understand objects because we'll be doing a lot of things on that object, and I need to very sure I understand objects. It's clear to us. All right, so move on to the next one, which is going to be functions. Now we're going to take a little bit of time in functions because functions are like what everything is built on, right? So we'll be taking series of examples on functions before doing any other thing. Because like I said, functions is basically what you build all of your projects on. So for instance, what are functions? So I gave an example when we were starting. I said we talked about scope, right? Function scope, block scope, global scope. No, sorry, global scope and local scope, right? Then there's something called function scope also. Now, when we talk about functions, right? Functions are they're a block of code designed to make a particular thing work. So for instance, now, if I ask you, what's the function of this car, of this fan? What's the main function of this fan? To what's the main function? To like blow something, Abby. But there is something making it work. That's what the major engine that has been what put into it. That's a function. Now that's exactly what your function is in JavaScript. Your function is those things you write to make whatever it is you want to come to life. That's it. That's what your function is. Now, in this particular file, now you have several things that is making it work, several functions. First of all, you need to think about how the blade is going to roll. You need to think about how it's going to rotate. You need to think about how the switch is going to control the blade. You need to think about how electricity is going to control. Now, a lot of functions, but as you can see, you have a lot of functions. They are all comes together to make one thing work. Now, that's how your code is. That's how you build not even web applications. That's how you build applications. You have a lot of functions come together to form one particular application. So, like I said, your function is like the base of anything that it is you want to build in JavaScript. The base, you need to understand your function. Please, this clear to us. Okay, so we're going to move on to talking about how to use your functions now. All right, so now, how exactly do you use functions? Now, your functions take in three things that you need to understand. First of all, is your declaration. Declaration, yeah. Second thing is to pass in your argument or the function. I don't want to use function again, but let's just use function. Then the third thing is to what? Call out your function. Call out function. Right? So again, the first thing is that you declare your function, right? Or don't let me say declaration, let me say initialization rather than declaration. Initialization. Initialize your function. That starts it. Then the last one will be what? Call out / declare. Declaration. Now, there's an analogy I like to give a lot of times. For instance, there's a newborn baby, right? What happens is that initially, that's when it was still young. In the Yoruba land, I know that they usually so if you give birth to a baby today, next 7 days or 8 days, you do the naming ceremony, right? Now you're given this particular child the name, let's say John, right? Now, years later, kid is already like a little bit grown, and then you want to send him on an errand. What do? You tell him the errand, you call the name, tell him the errand, and tell him to go. Then it brings back whatever it is you want to do. Now, that's the same thing with this function. First of all, you initialize it, give it a name. That's the first thing. Give it a name, then give it an argument. An argument is what you want it to do, or the function, right? That's what you want it to do. Then call it out, tell it to go and do whatever it is you want to do. Now, that is how functions work. So, for instance, let's have a function that multiplies two numbers, right? How do you do it? First of all, use your function keyword to what? Initialize. Then I'm going to give it a name. Now, that name, now it is not compulsory, but it is necessary. I like using that word. Now, your name, whatever name it is you're going to be giving your function, has to actually tie in with what you want your function to do. If it's going to be login, give it a function of function login. Sign up, sign up. You understand? Like, it is not compulsory, but it is what's necessary to make your code look sane. Now, if I say function, I can say, okay, let's say multiply. As you can see, it actually goes with what I want. Then I'm going to have this parentheses here, then curly braces. Now, this is how you would start up your function, initialize your function. Your function keyword, the function name, which serves like a variable name, right? This parentheses, and then you call it. Now, let's say I want to multiply two numbers. I can say, let me declare this out. I can say let A equals to 10, let B equals to what? 20, right? In my function, I cannot have what? Let's say I can say return A times what? B. Then outside here, I can just easily say what? Let's have console.log. Okay, you know what? Let me say return. I can't use return now. Let's use console.log. Right? Then outside here, I'm just going to say multiply. Now, I've just showed you how to use your function. First things first, initialize it. Second thing is what? Give it an argument or give it a functionality, something to do. Then the third thing is to what? Call out your function and declare it. Now, if these three things does not work, if these things are not there, your function will never work. So now if you check it out now, I should have what? 200. Why? Because I did the three things. First of all, initialize my function. Secondly, I gave it an argument. Then the third thing is to what? Call out and declare my function. Is it clear to us? Now that's exactly how your function works. So now let me give another example of a function. So let's say I'm going to say function. I'm going to say multiply again. Now, since we're multiplying two numbers, I'm just going to put a parameter here. Now you might be asking, what exactly is this thing for? This particular thing that is here. What is it for? Right? Now you can put in parameters. Now, what are parameters? Parameters are like variables that are basically tied to just that function, right? Now, what am I saying? For instance, I want to multiply two numbers, and I only want that two numbers to be in that function. I can give you two parameters. I can say A, comma B. Now, what have I just done? I've said, okay, yes, I want to multiply two numbers. The two numbers are going to have a variable of A and B, right? Now, I can now return A times B. Do you understand? Then in this place, then I can have what? Multiply. So let's have 5, 6. Now, what have I just done? I've said what? A is what? 5, and B is what? 6. And that, what am I saying? Return console.log. Now, do you understand it now? Now, if you check it out, what's going to happen is you're going to multiply 5 times 6, and you're going to call it what? 30. And that exactly is how it works. So I can change the number here to like 10, and that's going to be what? 160. Sorry, 60 rather. 100 is going to be 160. What am I saying? That's 60. Now that exactly is what your function is all about. So function is saying, taking up two numbers, and then I'm going to be giving it what? I'm going to be giving it functionality and making them work. Now that's basically what your function is all about. Do you understand function? Is it clear? All right. So, yeah, go ahead.
Let's say the parameters, right? It's more than one.
Yes, you can. There's more than one already.
It's two more than two.
You can definitely put more. You can put 10 depending on what you want to do. But make sure that what you want to do needs to have like, you need to have a reason for it. Then what if I want to do this, create this same object here? Now I told you can create it in two ways. Either use an object method or a constructor method. Now, what if I want to create the same thing as an object, or I'm using the constructor method? Now I can do the same thing. I can say function, right? I can let me just say my car, right? Now all of this make here, I'm going to use them as what? As a parameter, just like I did here. So right, I cannot say, oh, I can say make, I can call it year, then I can say model. You understand? Then I can have make right here, then this dot. Sorry, let me even check this thing again. Is it this dot something? Yeah, no, that's not it. Yeah, this dot make rather. So we can have this dot make good. This dot make should be the make, which is this one here. Then check it again. Actually, it's supposed to work. My this is giving me error. Let me check those. Why is that an error? Okay. This dot here. Is this voice trying to tell me? This don't make equals to what make. Okay, I understand it now. This dot here equals to what here. And this dot model equals to what model. So I'm going to also explain what this keyword means. Then outside, I can now have what my car. Then I'm going to say the make. I'm going to call the make. Let's call it Ford. Then no, not Ford. Then we're going to call the year 1978. Then we're going to call the model Mustang, right? So yeah, that's it. So if I go ahead and say console.log my car now, my car, now check what we're gonna have now. What is not defined? Now that's a problem. But it's okay. That's a mistake. That's a mistake here. So I'm gonna remove this. I don't need to add this. I don't need to add this again. Jesus. So if you check it out now, what are you gonna have? You're gonna have this don't make equals to make. Then I can change this make here, and I can say, oh, this don't make should now be Ford. I can even make it this Ford. This dot here is not going to be what? Let's say 1978. Then this dot model is not going to be what? Mustang. Now, if you check it out, now what are you going to have? As you can see, Ford 1978 and what? Mustang. Now, if I want to go ahead and check out the make, I can say my car or what? Make. Now, if you check it out, what are you going to have now? So let's say undefined. I don't think I need this. Let's see this don't make. Let's check it out. Very good. As you can see, what's it giving to you? It's giving you what? What? If I did this dot here, what are you gonna have? 1978 coming out. Then if I say this dot Mustang, this dot model rather, it's gonna give you what? Mustang. Now that is one way which you can what use this particular Muslim to call out whatever it is you want to call out. Do you get it now? That is that about that. But one thing is that it is good for you to understand how to use functions to create things like this also, because you might need it. Again, all of these things, these are your AI programs by making sure that you read as much as possible, understand as much as possible, and then use whatever tools you have to solve problems. And that is how it is. Now, do we understand? I think we've done a lot on a stretch. So I'm gonna give us time to write this down and then what digest and understand how some of these things work before we move on to the next thing.